Welcome to our special guests, the musician, composer, actor and artist, Mr. Shekhar Ravjiani. Author and journalist, Ms. Ashwini Devare. Poet-writer, Mr. Shivram Gopinath. And Ms. Mrigaa Sethi.
A very good morning to one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming four very eminent people among us. Mr. Shekhar Ravjiani is one of India's most renowned music directors and singer, a youth icon who has always believed in working with children. He and his musician partner, Vishal Dadlani, have composed more than 600 songs for over 70 movies over the past 15 years in movies like Bachna E Hasino, Ravan, Student of the Year, Bang Bang, Chennai Express, and Happy New Year, to name a few. Mr. Shekhar is an enormously gifted musician, and his singles like Hanuman Chalisa, Devi, a recent single on a girl child, and the Gayatri Mantra have touched millions of hearts. He is also India's most featured and loved judge on reality shows, having mentored and judged numerous shows like Indian Idol, Saregama, Om Shanti Om, Voice Kids, and Dil Hai Hindustani for the past 10 years. Over the years, he has sung a number of popular tracks which have won him the love and adulation of fans all over the world. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And this time to our GIIS SMART Campus.
We now take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Ashwini Devare. Ms. Ashwini is an author and a former journalist who worked for the BBC's Asia Business Report in Singapore and CNBC Asia. Ms. Ashwini has published 2 books. Her latest, Lost at 15, Found at 50, is a coming-of-age memoir that chronicles her journey from Moscow to Singapore, set against the backdrop of historic political events. Her first book, Batik Rain, was a collection of short stories that received critical acclaim. Ms. Ashwini has a master's degree in journalism from The American University in Washington, D.C., and currently lives in Singapore. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, Ms. Ashwini.
We also welcome our next guest, Mr. Shivram Gopinath. He is a writer and spoken word performer. His poetry has been heard at the Singapore Writers Festival, Singapore Heritage Fest, Lit Fest, Borobudur Writers and Cultural Festival, Neon Lights, Jaipur Literary Festival, and more. His most recent work is Main Shair To Nahi, a collaborative project that combines spoken word and music from Tamil and Hindi cinema as a way of exploring the Indian experience. He is a creative director of Ultra Super New, a creative agency and gallery space, and is also the 2015 and 2016 Singapore National Poetry Slam champion. We are very happy to have you here with us, sir.
Moderating a discussion with this panel will be author and poet Ms. Mrigaa Sethi. Ms. Sethi was born in Delhi and raised in Bangkok. She received an MFA in poetry from the New York University, and after a circuitous string of jobs in higher education and food writing, she currently serves as the chief sub-editor at travel media publisher Inc. in Singapore. Her poems have appeared in Mackerel, Seneca Review, Epiphany, the Bangkok Post and Folio, and she has performed at the Singapore Night Festival, Other Tongues Minority Voices Festival, Telling Stories Live, the Kundiman Reading Series, the Asian American Writers Workshop Reading Series, among other literary stages. Thank you, Ms. Mrigaa, for being here with us today.
We request the entire team to kindly come on stage and take their seats for their discussion on what it takes to create.
Thank you so much for being here, and thanks so much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here with old friends and new friends. We decided that in addition to just talking, we would also have short readings and performances from each of the panelists, just so in case you don't know their work, which might be a laughable proposition for some people, but it would be nice if we could hear just the kind of creative work that we're talking about in this discussion. So I invite Shivram to start us out with a short 5-minute piece, and then during the course of the discussion, we'll pause and invite Ashwini and Shekhar to do the same.
Hello? Okay. Is this working? All right, cool. Hi, I'm Shivram. So I write poetry that's meant to be performed, or meant to be on a stage, meant to be read out aloud, so on a stage rather than a page. Right? And when I was sort of growing up, the first poet I came across or started following was Bharatiyar. This is Tamil poet. Some of you may know him or may not. Sort of revolutionary poet from the pre-independence era. So I really enjoyed his poetry a lot. I would go seek it out. I would listen to songs that featured his poetry and so on. So when I started writing poetry, I decided I must be like him, which I'm not, right? So I took one of his poems, one of my favorite poems of his, and sort of wrote a preface, or used it as a preface to my own poem. It's called Achamillai, which means no fear. This is just me telling myself to not be scared more than anything. Achamillai, achamillai, achamembadillaye. Ichathilullorum yedittanenda podilum achamillai, achamillai, achamembadillaye. Tuchamaga yenni nammai thooru seyya podilum achamillai, achamillai, achamembadillaye. Pichai vaangi unnu vaazhkai petruvitta podilum achamillai, achamillai, achamembadillaye. இச்சை கொண்ட பொருளெல்லாம் இழந்து விட்ட போதிலும் அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமென்பதில்லையே கச்சணிந்த கொங்கை மாதர் கண்கள் வீச போதிலும் அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமென்பதில்லையே நச்சை வாய் கொணர்ந்து நண்பரூட்ட போதிலும் அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமென்பதில்லையே பச்சை யூனி 5 பேர் படைகள் வந்த போதிலும் அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமென்பதில்லையே உச்சி மீது வானிடிந்து வீடுகின்ற போதிலும் அச்சமில்லை அச்சமில்லை அச்சமென்பதில்லையே no fear, no such thing as fear. There are voices that say we are the generation of easy. Too easily irked, too easy to smirk, too easily amazed, too easily easy. We are keyboard warriors. We are, thank God it's Friday, zombies. Our selfies are just cries of help me with a filter on. Every year our phones get better, but we don't. We are our own sad commentary, The Walking Dead, our documentary. We are reckless, we are feckless, we are uncut diamonds on an unworn necklace, we are know-it-alls and do-nothings. There are voices that say we are sheep, herded by corporate sheepdogs, sheriff of our courage and opinions. We are lemmings dressed up in suits and ties, moving up escalators to edges of 9-to-5 cliffs, where we happily fall and die deaths while still alive. We are chicken, reared in touchscreen cages, shackled by earphone chains, force-fed half-truths and reality shows. We are rom-com prom kings and all shine, no substance bling-blings. We are oysters without pearls. We are all fake eyelashes and curling iron curls. We sting like butterflies. We work like bees. We have weak hearts and weak knees. But I know those voices are wrong because I know you. You are a fire-breathing dragon with a heart of gold. Your potential is a determined single mother. You are a warrior princess. You are a king in waiting. Look at your hand. Look at your hand. With those hands, you will mold grand things in your image. You are a slashing razor blade, our first aid, our solace and refuge. You don't scramble for droplets. You know there is an ocean inside of you. Have you seen the children and how happy they are to be running to nowhere in particular, happy to just be running? You run like that with no fear, no such thing as fear. You are not a lemming. You are no chicken. You're lions and lionesses with no fear, no such thing as fear. Achemillai, achemillai, achemen badillaye. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivram. So we'll just dive right into it. And during the course of our conversation, we'll also hear creative pieces from Ashwini and Shekhar. So the question of this panel is quite broad. It's what does it take to create? So we'll start broad, and then we'll try and refine the question a bit more. I want to start very broadly. I want to ask you why. You've spoken a bit about your writing life, and we've heard your introductions, but what it doesn't cover is why do you do what you do instead of something else? So we'll start with you, Shekhar, and maybe we could move down the panel.
Hello. Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to just thank these two beautiful hosts over there who introduced all of us. So please make a huge round of applause for both these kids out there. Come. They're so good. These guys are amazing. Wow. Whoa. That was the best introduction ever. Thank you. And the whole experience of coming on stage when that whole orchestral music happened felt like I was at Oscars or something like that. One day it'll happen. I think it's a huge honor for me to be here again. I was here last year. GIIS, thank you so much for having me here again. Atul, thank you so much for having me here. I met the principal. Thank you for having me here, and all you students out here who've been so sweet and so wonderful and so welcoming. Thank you so much, everybody. And it's an honor to be on this panel with such esteemed people out here. Coming back to you and your question, I do what I do because I can't do anything else except making music. That's all I know. I was about 14, 15, completely lost about what should I do? What field should I go in? Because there's everyone discussing that, what do you want to do in life? I said, I don't know. But all I know that is I love music. Are you going to make a career out of that? I said, I don't know. I'm just going to go with the flow. And I think for anyone, if you believe in something and if anything makes you happy, you should do that. Because that happiness will take you to where you want to go. It'll show you the direction, it'll show you the route. Automatically the energies will be such that people will start, holding your hand and walking with you and take you there. There will be a lot of struggle in life. There'll be lots of ups and downs in life. But if you believe in what you want to do, and if your art becomes God and if you worship it, then there's no looking back. That's how I see music. This is what I do. And I'm very proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to have received that warm and wonderful welcome from all of you. Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be here today. The question that you asked me is actually very relevant for me. My book is titled Lost at 15, Found at 50. And just to give you a little bit of a background, my father was in the Indian Foreign Service in the 70s and the 80s. And at that time, when we were abroad, there weren't that many Indians. So very often I used to be the only brown kid in a sea of white. Every 2 to 3 years, we would get posted across continents. So I had this roller coaster ride, going from Moscow to Burma to Switzerland to Korea to India to, after a while, it became a blur. But for me, it was a lot of angst because I was having to make new friends and being in environments that were alien and hostile sometimes. And I discovered very early on in life that what worked for me was writing. The only way I could cope with all these changes that were swirling outside my window was sitting down and writing, expressing myself and letting it all out between music and writing. My mother is a trained classical musician. And between listening to music and writing, I found ways of able to cope with these swings that were in my life. So at 15, I was back in India after having lived abroad all my life. And when I came to India, I felt like a foreigner with nowhere to run. And once again, after being in India for 3-4 years, we were flung to South Korea. I was in Switzerland at an age where, at the time in the 70s in Switzerland, there were no other Indians. I mean, there were very few Asians that you could see. And I was in grade 5, and I was forced to go to a Swiss school because back then we couldn't afford the international schools. India was a poor country back then. And we were representing a country that was impoverished, but we had to act, like we were representatives. We had to be very proud of our country. And it was hard because, you enter a school and you're the only Indian. I remember dying many deaths every time I would enter that school compound or be in a classroom where nobody spoke a word of English. So I was studying history, geography, science, and French. I was forced to learn a language I'd never heard before. So I would come back home, and then I had copious numbers of diaries and notebooks, and I would just write and write and write. And that became my refuge. And even today, my desk is my sanctuary. It's a space in my house. I'm very possessive about my desk. Even my kids aren't allowed to come near my desk. It's off limits to everybody in my family. And that's where I found refuge, and I would do a lot of my writing just sitting in that space, and it still works for me today. So writing is therapeutic for me. I love it.
Shivram?
Writing is sort of a defense mechanism for me. So similar-ish story, but different. My dad is from a smaller town in Tamil Nadu, about a couple of 100 kilometers from Chennai. And that's where I grew up. And I was the only kid, only boy in the first boy in the family, rather. Extremely adored and spoiled. And went to a not too good school where English wasn't really priority because it was a small town. And I could get away with anything. And obviously my parents were like, what is wrong with this kid? So I moved to Chennai when I was kind of like your age, about 10 or 11, I forget, I don't know how old you guys are. Maybe you're older, sorry. 14? Okay. Not far. Moved to Chennai, and there it was, it was a great big school, in a lot of ways similar to your campus, actually. It was a really good school, and I did not speak English, was overwhelmed and intimidated by everything that was going on around me, and sort of slipped into an immense inferiority complex. Could not speak to anybody, could not speak to girls, which at that age was traumatizing. So I started reading anything that was put in front of me. Architecture magazine, newspaper, brochures, pamphlets, anything that was written in English, I would sort of just read, just out of fear of not knowing something, So just reading and reading, kind of almost to psych myself up in order to face school, was how I got interested in language. And in a lot of ways, even now, it's a defense mechanism in terms of me trying to learn more about myself. I think I know myself the best when I have seen what I have written. So that's why I continue writing. I find the process of finding what I'm made of, finding what I'm about, finding what I'm becoming through my writing, the most interesting process. And that sort of keeps me going and keeps me writing and trying to make myself better.
Shekhar, earlier you were saying that when you were 14 and 15 in school, you didn't know what you wanted to do, and you weren't that interested in studies. So I think a lot of creative people in the audience are probably in a situation where their parents are like, "Oh, artist, but why don't you do your master's first and then just do whatever you want?" Or how are you going to pay the bills? And I'm also aware that all of you at some point were paying the bills. Some of you are still paying the bills. So Shivram, you work in advertising full time, and your creative life is something that happens outside of your working hours. And Ashwini, you were a journalist for a long time, and you still are. You're still freelancing. And Shekhar, there was a time when you were working in advertising as well. So talk to us a little bit about the job versus the arts and the role of education. I think all of you had to reckon with education in some way, or whether it's important or how important it is. Or earlier, Shekhar, you were saying that education is never wasted, even if you don't end up pursuing your degree.
That's what I realize now, because as an artist, you want to kind of explore. Whether it's singing or whether it's playing an instrument. But at the same time, there's this constant pressure of exams coming up to deliver those percentages which you need to kind of, what your family is expecting. You also don't want to be embarrassed in class by getting lowest marks. So there's constant pressure which is always there. But I feel that whatever I could do, I was not a very, very bright student. I was in my 65, 70s. That's it, 65%, 70%. That's 72 must be the max I must have got. And I feel that right now, after being a graduate, I feel that every single subject I studied about is helping me in my music. Anything, any subject. There is a relation in music. If you talk about history, there's that period vibe, which when you make music like that, you start visualizing things. You visualize while you create only because you know about it. And you know about it is when you're in school, you kind of study history, you study various other subjects which, maths for example, there's a certain, it's about sur or tal, it's about the tempo, the time. You know about that, you can do those calculations. Everything helps. I think education is a must. And if you have dreams of becoming an artist, you should do that parallelly. But education, you should finish your education. It's very, very important that you kind of finish whatever you've started. And that will really help you in any field of art, anything, whether it's dancing, whether it's painting, whether it's writing, anything. And that I've realized in the last couple of years that every single process of even writing a song, for example, if you're just putting lyrics down, you're suddenly visualizing a story in your 8th standard textbook here. That there was a story about so-and-so person, and you suddenly have that story in your head. And that story is getting connected to one of your songs. It's a very bizarre connection, but there is a connection to it. That's how you create, because you just put your experiences, you kind of, whatever happens in your personal life, how you feel with a friend or your parent, or any emotion you feel, everything comes out in art. Everything comes out, and comes out beautifully, because you know you can control that emotion. You know exactly how to control that. You might have something which is like really, really intense, but then that emotion becomes yours at some point, so you can control it on how you want to put it down when it's art. When you're writing something, there's a certain level of it. When you're in love with someone, how much you love that person. There's an intensity of love also. So that's the way you kind of, that's how music flows. And I feel that everything we've like experienced all shows up in music, art, writing, everything.
I absolutely echo what Shekhar just said. Everything is interlinked. And I'm actually really envious of all of you sitting out here today because you all are embarking on this journey of knowledge. You're at the cusp of this world that's waiting for you outside. You're going to step into this world and these are the years where you can learn and imbibe and get all that knowledge which will be a foundation and a stepping stone when you enter this world out there. And each one of you is going to make a mark. Many of you will write memoirs. Do please start taking notes and documenting things, even if it doesn't seem important. And study all the subjects. As Shekhar said, you never know what's going to come in handy. And more than anything, the confidence that it'll give you when you are steeped in that knowledge, when you can talk about history or science or math or any subject with knowledge. And these are the years where you can imbibe them and your neurons are firing. Today, I can't study what I would have been able to study at your age, and I wish I had. So, use this opportunity because these are the golden years. Don't waste a single minute. Go back home and start studying even though you hate it. And all these subjects that you have, 9 subjects, 8 subjects, of course they'll be handy for you. They'll come in useful when you do your SATs or college apps. But beyond that, in the real world, when you're in your 30s, in your 40s, that knowledge will be with you forever. And, the question that you asked, I think these subjects, education, there is no substitute for education. We're extremely fortunate and blessed that we can have this amazing education here at GIIS, and it's a gift that we should all value because it's very precious. So many people don't get a chance to go to school. And education has shaped me personally, shaped so many of us. I became a journalist because of my love for writing, because of my love for geopolitics. Also, I got a salary out of it. Journalism had its own type of creativity. It's a different form of creativity. It's under deadlines, you're right, it's breaking news. How do you be creative under that? It's a different kind, but it's creative. To write a story about the tsunami in 2 minutes. I was given 2 minutes at the BBC to write about the 2006 tsunami. So how do you make it compelling and interesting and creative when you have 2 minutes or 30 seconds to write that grabbing headline while keeping it authentic and accurate and factual? So creativity is enmeshed in every field. I don't think creativity is exclusive. Whether you're a teacher or a scientist or a lawyer, maybe not a lawyer, but any field, the creativity is everybody's gift. It's all about getting that creative genie out of the bottle, taking that scenic route instead of the highway, and approaching things innovatively. And for that, you have to have a lot of curiosity, a lot of inquisitiveness, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
When I was in school, I was amazing. I was amazing in language. I was amazing in English and Tamil and social science and everything, actually, everything except math. Okay. Math, I could not get math because I did not understand why we had to learn calculus or trigonometry, or even before that, like, why do I need to know what the highest common factor of a number is, Like, because everything else I used to get. I used to get why we need to learn English. I used to get why we need to learn about science and about the world through your civics and social studies and whatever form of it you have here, right? But I did not get why we had to learn numbers beyond the fact that they are numbers and you can add them and you can divide them. What else do you want me to know about these numbers, I think when I finally realized, which was kind of later than it should have been, in terms of why I needed to learn something, why I needed to learn calculus, for example, or trigonometry, for example, even though I was fairly sure at that age that I'm never going to use this, right? I mean, I'm never going to use this. Why am I learning this? Why am I wasting my time, right? But I think at a certain point I realized it is good to know things that you don't know what it's going to be useful for, like Shekhar said, because there are bizarre connections you're going to make as you sort of grow up. When you find out, I have no idea how this zapped back into my head, and this is amazingly useful for me at this moment. It will happen. Whatever you're learning now, it might not all equally, right? But it will come back to you and help you in a way you don't even understand or expect right now. That has happened to me so many times. Just the knowledge of the fact that I've learned. I'm just using trigonometry as another example because I used to hate it the most, right? So many times they've sort of zapped back into my life to remind me that I have learned them and I hated them. Just the knowledge of me knowing and hating it, or the knowledge of the little I know from what I remember, right? These things come to help you in ways that are completely unexpected, which is why I sort of now enjoy seeing those connections happen from time in school and from time outside of school, from around that age, and the ways that they've come back to sort of serve me in their own little surprising, unexpected ways, even things I used to hate.
Maybe for this question, we'll reverse the order. So Shivram, you can pick your microphone back up. And actually, may I suggest that we can hold our applause till the end, because otherwise we'll just be applauding everyone. I know they're very brilliant, except for Shivram. So earlier, Ashwini, you had this image of releasing the genie in the bottle. And Shekhar, I know you've been at GIIS a few times in the past. And I watched a video of you leading a music masterclass, and the first thing you did, you were sitting on stage with a harmonium, and you led the students in an extended chanting of Om, and that was how you began your masterclass. And I'd like to hear from you guys about what's important to you in terms of releasing the genie in the bottle. What are the important rituals and respects that you pay in order to begin the creative process? So maybe we'll start in the opposite direction this time.
I'm a very undisciplined writer. I need to give myself deadlines, artificial or otherwise. Because writing is when I first started out writing, I used to really honestly, it was done. I started writing in sort of like beginning of university. It was done to impress girls, and no girls were impressed, right? But when I realized the process of me trying to write for myself is when I started developing certain rituals and knowing more about why I was operating in a certain way, right? So I used to my writing used to happen 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. with no sleep, again and again. And it was sort of unsustainable. So I used to be so undisciplined, nothing would come to my head. I would then be up and not eat. This was my ritual. Be up, not eat, watch a lot of crap on YouTube, and start writing about 3 or 4 o'clock the day something is due, or the night before, right?
And do you recommend that ritual?
No, completely tested and unsustainable, okay? Do not follow example. This used to be my process because I did not sort of swing into the moment of writing until I felt there was absolute pressure for me to do something or else, right? And this is completely unsustainable. So this was my earlier ritual, which then shifted to a much more relaxed version of this, which is, sorry, what happened in the sort of middle was, I could see this sort of pressure of getting to certain friends of mine, you know, and I realized that I shouldn't be doing that to myself. And so I sort of shifted to a model of timed writing sessions, which was either the first thing of the day or the last thing I do before I go to sleep. So I got to better sleeping hours. But sort of started to write through discipline in a much more disciplined way, where I set myself deadlines of like, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to be pretty unhappy with myself, or there is a certain thing that I have to get to, so it has to be completed. So I would give myself these deadlines and give myself sort of writing sessions and trust myself to perform in those sessions and back myself to write away. Because that model of like this sort of romantic version of, be up all night and write something genius, I saw that was sort of taking its toll on a lot of people and on myself. So my rituals changed to sort of be my own kind of instructor and like whipping myself mentally to stick to sustainable ways of creation, which is in my current form, which is timed writing sessions, probably first thing in the day, last thing I do at night.
So when I started writing my memoir, I was plagued with a lot of doubt because, I'm not a celebrity out to tell all memoir. So why should I be writing a memoir? So there were a lot of voices in my own head questioning. I think the worst thing you can do is overthink or question yourself too much. So I decided I'm just going to write it anyway because it was something that I was drawn to, and I found myself getting very interested in those eras I was trying to recreate in history, the 60s and the 70s. So as I started writing the book, then I think I forgot who I was writing it for. It became a very immersive, almost like a meditative sort of an experience. And then you don't try to think too much about the outcome. Once you've finished your work, then you can worry about it. But at that time, it's such a beautiful experience, just the process of writing, that you sort of forget what's out there and who's going to publish it and which agent is going to take it and all that. But I totally agree with you on saying that, when you talked about, people think that creative people get this bolt of inspiration, and that's when they start writing. So if I was to wait for that inspiration, I'd be waiting my whole lifetime because, I think that's a myth. I don't know about you, Shekhar, but for you as well, you said you tried to do it at 3 in the morning. I've never been able to produce my best work at 3 in the morning. I'm a morning person. But I think that whole concept that you're sitting on the beach and you look at the waves and that whole Harry Potter series unravels in your head. I think you'll be too busy taking pictures of that ocean and putting it on Instagram and waiting for those likes to come in or whatever. So I think for me, creativity or writing is just pure hard work. It's like a job. You just sit at your desk and you write. It's boring, it's monotonous, it's tedious. You just have to do it even if you don't feel like doing it. So I think that whole concept that you wait for this creativity to strike. I think everybody's creative, and it's just a matter of discipline. It's just monotonous at times, but I think you just have to just keep at it. It's a lot of discipline and hard work.
Shekhar?
This chair is too comfortable here. In my school, there used to be stools and all that. Bums used to hurt. The reason of this Om chanting, which I did last year with the kids, is we all driving at the speed of 100 miles per hour every day. For the students, school, wake up early in the morning, school, tuitions, this, that. For us, the same routine of madness. So the car has to be still at some point, So that's the way I wanted to kind of get everyone there. And Om has this very strong energy. Not only the students, but even the teachers were singing Om last time. So there's some before you start, you just kind of breathe a little. So this was just a breather, you know, just a start, which was saying a name which, even when you kind of say Om and put a sur to it, it just fills the room. It just gives everyone mental peace. And then you begin your workshop. So that's the reason I kind of did that. I'm a believer that, and I feel it's always happened to me that some, maybe weather, or maybe it's the food, or maybe I'm just having a really nice shower. All these things kind of, a tune comes out at that point. It's might be a little weird and a little filmy in saying that, you know, something like this happened and you started creating. But that's the way about music, you know, it's a thing that you kind of, when you try hard, nothing happens. When you don't try at all, everything happens. There was this lyricist, Amitabh Bhattacharya, who came one day to the studio, and there was a love song which I had to do in this film called Hasi To Phasi. It was raining outside, and suddenly some vada pav came. So both these things made me happy, the vada pav as well as the rains. And he came and he suddenly, sir, agar zeh-nasib एक शब्द है, उसको यूज किया जाए तो कैसा रहेगा? ऐसे उसका मतलब क्या होता है? ज़ह-नसीब मीन्स फॉर्चुनेट. ऐसे अगर ये अच्छा नहीं लगता तो दूसरा भी वर्ड है, बेतहाशा. ऐसे आपको क्या हो गया? मीन्स व्हाई, वेयर आर यू गेटिंग दीज वर्ड्स फ्रॉम? He said, I don't know, sir. It's just the way we are sitting. बारिश हो रही है. It's raining outside. It's so pretty. Everything is like, and there's also some fried mirchi along with pav vada. So everyone's like really excited about this whole thing. It's just happiness. That's exactly how music happens in a place. There's energy. So I said, I even like beta hasha. I said, what does beta hasha ka matlab kya? Behad means बहुत ज़्यादा. So I said, now I like this word also. So what should I work on? I said, सोचते नहीं है. He says, sir, दोनों लाइन डाल देते. दोनों वर्ड जो है वो एक लाइन में डाल देते हैं. तो ज़ह नसीब तुझे चाहूँ बेतहाशा ज़ह नसीब. We kind of made this thing, and it just happened because there were certain energies in the place, and things kind of worked. But whenever I've tried to do something, it has never happened. Whenever I've put effort behind something, it has never happened. I've sat on a tune for like 4 hours, 5 hours. Didn't happen. One day I just woke up in the morning with the tune in my head. It was done. There have been so many tunes like that, so many tunes which you guys have loved, which have just happened out of like less than 5 or 6 seconds. The entire tune has popped up. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh shit, I have a tune. But sometimes it has also happened that I have a tune and I've forgotten in 2 hours what the tune was. So even that has happened. So it's, I think every creator has its own, and I completely respect their own process of, working, because, see, we are blessed here. All of us are blessed of what we have, what we do. And I always want to say that just not us, but even you guys sitting out there are all blessed. You guys have something, you just have to find it. Once you find it, then there's no looking back. Then you'll know exactly what to do.
अगली बार वड़ा पाव पे भी गाना दे दीजिए ना.
It's already happened before, so
I see.
Didn't want to repeat.
मिर्ची मार के. I want to make sure we have questions from the floor. So I want to wrap up my own questions, but I want to ask Ashwini and Shekhar to also do a short reading or song. Do we have time? A very abbreviated reading, and then after that we can open for 3 or 4 questions, if that's okay. Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
I'll keep it very short. This is an excerpt from my chapter, Feels Like Home. when I returned to India in 1981 to 85, and that's the longest I ever lived in India, and I came to India when I was 15. Joining a new school in 9th grade in a country famed for its notoriously high academic standards was not something I would have voluntarily inflicted on myself at the age of 15. Sometimes I wished I'd gone to boarding school like many other children from the Foreign Service. At least that would have prepared me for the brutal rigor of Indian schools. But as my mother would often tell me, your father and I never dreamed of sending you away. We wanted you to be with us. And that's how I tagged along with them from country to country and ended up in my grandmother's house in the outskirts of Pune during my formative high school years. After the small, friendly, cozy school in Rangoon, the all-girls St. Joseph's Convent felt impersonal and intimidating. Girls of all shapes and sizes milled around in their beige uniforms, red belts, white socks, and black shoes. With my 2 plaits, which my grandmother neatly oiled and braided every morning, I should ostensibly have blended right in, but there was something about me that spelt foreigner in big and bold letters. That I didn't know a single person in the school did not make settling in easier. The first week, I found myself struggling to understand the equations the chemistry teacher was writing on the board. All around me, girls were hastily scribbling notes as they tried to keep up with Miss Naik's swift pace. Like most Indians, she talked very fast. Who got 2 out of 10? Whose paper is this? Miss Naik waved a sheet in the air. When no hands were raised, I realized in horror that the paper was mine. 45 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. This is a fail, declared Miss Naik, showing no mercy as she dropped the test paper on my desk. My desperate desire to hide felt like a migraine, my constant companion. Here I was in my own country with nowhere to run. Burma felt very far away. It took me a year to figure out the Indian curriculum, but once I mastered the art of cramming, it worked like magic. I memorized every single paragraph on every single page. I could recite my history book upside down. I even knew where the commas were. With Miss Naik's voice ringing in my ears, this is a fail, I too went for tuition in the evenings like all the other girls to conquer my fear of science and math like you. I found cramming for 9 subjects far less torturous than having to share the single squatting toilet in my grandmother's house with 4 others.
Thank you, Ashwini. I can't wait to hear what happens next. Shekhar, will you please grace us with a song before we open the floor up for a few questions?
Before I sing that Vada Pav song for you guys, I just have one thing to tell you guys, all you students out here. I still, there's a full deja vu moment at this point where I was in 8th standard, 9th standard, and I was asked to sing a song in front of a lot of students, and I came here and I kind of couldn't sing and I was nervous. My legs were shivering, hands were shivering, and I kind of felt, and no voice was coming out at that point, and I just, like, everyone just started laughing, and then I kind of went back home and told my mom about this. So my mom said, you know what, I'm really happy that you tried. Going up on stage was itself a victory. I made an album when I was 16 years old, and I went to many music companies with my album, and they told me, you can't sing here, or you can't compose. Aap chhod to bas, just leave music. And I went back home, and I was just wondering that what wrong did I do in this? Means what's wrong with this entire thing? So I was quite upset. And one day a guy called me up and said, I love your album, I want to put it out. And that album was a big hit. Guys, do me a favor. In life, don't be afraid of trying. You gotta try. It's okay to fall. But when you fall, that's when you rise. And that rise, when you feel it, when you feel that love from people, that'll just be the most beautiful moment of your life. What I'm feeling at the moment. I'm sitting here, you guys, have been working very hard on your studies as well as what you do, what you love. But make that try. Make that first move to get on stage. Do something which you've never done before. And fail a couple of times. But one day you will kind of be number one in that. That's it. I just want to say this to you guys. So coming back to that Vada Pav song. Yeah, it's called Zay Naseeb, and I'm going to sing a few lines for you guys. My legs are not shivering now. Zay Naseeb. Do you have some reverb out here or something? Sound? Oh, yeah, nice. Check. Little more. Check. All right. Zay Naseeb, Zay Naseeb, तुझे चाहूं बेतहाशा Zay Naseeb, मेरे करीब, मेरे हबीब, तुझे चाहूं बेतहाशा Zay Naseeb, तेरे संग बीते हर लम्हे पे हमको नाज है, तेरे संग जो ना बीते उस पे एतराज है, इस कदर हम दोनों का मिलना एक राज है, हुआ अमीर दिल गरीब, तुझे चाहूं बेतहाशा Zay Naseeb. The sound is so good, I can go on and on.
Thank you so much for your time, guys, and for sharing so honestly about some not so flattering things from your past. Before we end, I want to make sure that we take a couple of questions from the audience. So here's your chance, guys. Do we have any questions? How about the young lady in the black shirt?
Normally in school, it is the students who have a special talent that's generally not taught in school that are considered artists. My question to you is whether you think students who are academically inclined or sporty, whether they are also artists.
So the question was, in the school setting, it's usually the students who have talents outside of academics who are considered the artistic kinds. But would you say that students who are academically inclined and good at school, are they artists too, or can they be considered artistic?
Absolutely, absolutely. Was that question for you? Yeah? You're a high scorer? Then there's no better artist than you. I think you're the best artist we have right now.
If you don't mind my answering that question as well, you are, as he said, an artist. And it's interesting because I have two sons. One is a filmmaker and one is a science kid. And we always thought of the younger one as the creative genius because he does film. But it turns out that my son, who's studying chemistry, is just as artistic and just as creative in his own ways. So I have one of each, and I know there's no difference. So even academics is an extremely creative field, so you're on the right track.
You're going to be an artist with money, which is the best kind. Any other questions, please? How about the young lady in the back?
Hi, my name's Anandi, and my question is for Miss Ashwini. So, like you said, you're not going to wait for any inspiration for your writing. And personally, I mean, I don't think I'm that great of a writer. So, and it's not really easy to come up with topics to write. So have you ever felt that, at some lowest point, were you ever at like a lowest point where you just blanked out? And how did you deal with that?
It's a very good question. Writer's block is a very common problem. There are days when I go in and I write one paragraph. I spend 4 hours and I write one paragraph. I go back the next day and I delete that paragraph. So I'm back to square one. So writing is all about rewriting, deleting, and it's a very frustrating process. You're never happy with your, what you've written very often. I have multiple drafts of this book. In fact, 8 drafts, I think. And each time, it was, I was unhappy until you reach a point where you feel, okay, I think I really can't do much more with this anymore. So, you have to just write. It doesn't matter. Start writing a diary. Write about an event or a person in your family. Write about anything that you feel like writing about. It could be something really mundane. It doesn't have to be something really esoteric and grand. It can be something really simple. But the idea is to just get out there and write 1 or 2 sentences even to just break that barrier and feel confident about what you're going to write. Because as Jodi Picoult, one of these best-selling authors, said, you can edit a bad page, but you can't edit a blank page. And I really think that's true.
One last question, please.
So my name is Akshay, and my question to you is that if your children were to decide to follow arts instead of academics, would you encourage it?
Sir, can I answer, sir? Yeah. So if my child wants to kind of do arts and not academics, then I will go with what my child wants to do. I want to see my children happy. I want to see kids happy. Okay? Academics is something which I think every one of us should go through and complete. But at any point, when a student feels or a child feels that they want to do something in arts or some other thing, then I know a lot of students who post their 12th, they've gone ahead and done like 3 years or 4 years of diploma in music or a 4-year degree in theater. A lot of people have done that, a post-grad kind of thing. I think you guys should be happy. Yeah? And at the end of the day, it's just like whatever makes you happy, whether it's, your studies, music, writing, anything. I think what we miss is happy faces. We want to see more of these happy faces. So keep on doing what you love. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions. I wish we could take more, but unfortunately, can we take one more? The vibe is right. The vibe is right. Okay, this very excited person in the red shirt.
Very good afternoon. First of all, I'm a very huge fan of Mr. Shekhar. So this question is to you, sir. Did you imagine that going into this career would have blown up or become as famous as it is now? And how do you think it is affecting your career now?
I didn't know about this. I didn't know that it's going to become so big. But I still feel it's a start for me. I completed 20 years 4 days ago. 20 years in Bollywood and 5 years more of advertising. That makes me 25 years. I started when I was 16. I did my first commercial, I did the music for my first commercial when I was 16 years old. At the age of 17, I was the busiest music director making jingles for ad films. So, but I still feel that I have lots to learn, lots to achieve. And I'm hoping that 15, 20 years down the line, I'll have someone like you sitting out there, jumping up and saying, I'm a big fan of yours.
it's an important point. How does an artist measure success? Is it fame? Is it money? Is it number of books? And I think it's up to everyone to answer it for themselves. One last question, please. Someone from this side? You, young sir?
He looks like a little Michael Jackson out there.
Hello. So my question is that actually applies to all of you. When you guys were like our age, at that time all the parents were like only science and maths. Become a doctor, become an engineer. So, and you wanted to become like a writer or a musician. So who supported you? Did you get that support from your parents?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that because it actually happened also to me, which was going through school and then figuring out what I wanted to do in high school, right? So the Indian system is you figure out, I guess it's kind of similar-ish to Singapore, but not really. You have to figure out whether you're doing science and math and physics and, you know, that, or arts and commerce and economics. So there's like multiple streams, right? And I was like a pretty decent student. Like I would say not a terrible student at all, would do pretty well in school. And I started doing, whatchamacallit, math and science. And like because I was like, what do you want to become? I was like, I don't know, I guess maybe a doctor, because that was the only, one of the few options left to you, right? There was no sort of spectrum of many, like a buffet of choices that you could pick from. There was only a few in terms of like mental recognition of things that were things you had to do, right? So I started doing science, and then like 3 months later, I just woke up one night and I was like, I cannot do this. I really, really cannot. So and I was in boarding school then. I called my parents and I was like, I'm sorry, like to be trouble, but I really like genuinely cannot do this, and I cannot become a doctor. If I can't do 2 years of school studying science, I can't do 5 years of medical school and more, right? And they were like, okay. And they were super supportive. They were super, super supportive, which, you know, they haven't been supportive on a lot of things, but on like minor things. But for this one, they understood that you need to be doing what you feel like you should be doing. And they were like, okay, cool, let's switch streams, do what you like, and I was much happier. Next morning, I was a new person, you know. So absolutely, there was a lot of parental support, which is important, super, super important, obviously, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your questions, and thanks for answering so candidly. I hope you will now all drop out of school and become artists. Yeah.
Become a musician.
Do it.
But first, lunch. Thank you so much again for having all of us, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Mrigaa. Thank you so much.